This video is basically a summary and importance of the Cold War era. So many people talk about the Cold War and they know there's something recent and important, yet people don't really understand why it's called the Cold War and why people talk so much about it, even though it really shaped the way that the world looks like right now. And if we look at the events prior to the Cold War, we understand why it's called a Cold War, because before that there was a warm war in the sense that there was World War II, which it's not tepid, is very hot in the sense that there's a lot of blood and a lot of grief. It's not as subtle, and it's not a minor skirmish in another country that has nothing to do with the main conflict going on. So this is the whole idea of calling it a Cold War. So basically, the Cold War happened between two major powers, the United States and Russia, following World War II, all the way up to Perestroika, which is the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And if we think about the Cold War as a time where there was a lot of intrigue and a lot of spies, this is very, very accurate. Like the whole idea about spying happened, the whole symbolism of spies and the whole relevance of spies in the world has a lot to do with the Cold War era. So basically, Russia, after Berlin was invaded by the Allies, Russia took a huge chunk of Berlin in Germany and then declared it a part of the Soviet Union, and then annexed in a nice way, or not such a nice way, a lot of Eastern Europe and a lot of Central Asia to Russia. And this whole area, they call it the Soviet Union. So this area had a political view that was different from the States. The States believed in capitalism and a liberal economy. This was more of a planned economy. The planned economy basically means that the laws of supply and demand of the market don't really apply as much, because the government regulates a lot more the economy. And a lot of the areas that were subject to this were following Karl Marx, Das Kapital, the communism doctrine, and in many ways it was a movement that, as most of you know, advocated for the non-oppression of labor. This was how it was important. There were a lot of Marxist upstarting groups that happened especially in Africa, in Southeast Asia, and in Latin America. And I can speak about important examples of this, but we're gonna get back to the Cold War in itself. So there are a lot of conflicts between the United States and Russia that happen in third world countries, and I think one of the closest, or I think most people agree that the Cuban Missile Crisis was one of the closest ones to a major war between Russia and the States. But the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Berlin Wall was also very relevant, and Berlin Wall, and obviously there are conflicts such as the war in Angola had a lot to do with Marxism. There was a movement that tried to take over the government, or was Angola or the Democratic Republic of Congo? I'm not really remembering. Greece had a very similar issue, and China was really kind of kept to itself for a lot of this time. Even though China is considered a major global power, it annexed, or it really did not meddle that much with foreign affairs. It stayed away from the World War II pretty much, and while Japan was taking over a lot of the Pacific seaboard, and China stayed away from the World War II area. It is interesting that if you watch movies such as movies associated with the Iran Contras, you can really understand the relevance and the importance that it had. And I'm going to tell you one from my home country, Costa Rica, where there's this surfing spot called Ollie's Point, and then there was a resurgence of Marxist groups in Nicaragua. So Oliver North, who is a very controversial figure, according to several sources, had this secret base in Santa Rosa, and the wave is called Ollie's Point because of his secret base, which was the closest he could get in a American supporting country, Costa Rica, which is not allowed to have real bases, to Nicaragua.